Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cape and Cowl podcast. I believe this is episode 5 we're on right now. Time is flying. We've got a lot of awesome new information that's been released in the last couple days. So let's not really waste any more time and let's just get on right into it. So the first thing we want to talk about is the patch that released. It was delayed by a day, so it released yesterday, August 30th. And that was the patch that brought us quests, both weekly and daily quests. Now, quests had already been in the game for a little bit, but they were hidden. I don't know how often they were necessarily working because you didn't know they were there for the most part. And, it's always better just to have these features in the game invisible. So I'm very glad that they launched. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is I'm incredibly happy with the direction the developers took with quests. And there's a whole host of reasons for that. The first one being the general philosophy of you get one daily quest per day. You have 3 slots of quests to hold on to, which means in general, if you're only worried about maximizing your quests, you need to log in at least once every 3 days and finish at least a quest or 2 so you can open up another empty slot so that you can get another quest the next day. Now, the thing that I like about that is other games have quests that refresh, every couple hours. And for the most dedicated of players, that's a good thing. You have something to do every couple hours, you constantly have goals and carrots to chase. However, for the more casual players or the more busy players, people who might work long hours, the feeling of knowing that if you can't log in and play multiple times per day, you're missing out, that's a bad feeling that makes people not want to play your game anymore. So the first thing the developers did is they took a very player-friendly approach and said, listen, we don't want this to have to be your job if you don't want it to be. Go ahead and log in at least every couple days and you're going to be able to keep up. Obviously, you won't get as much coins as if you were to play and win a bunch of games every day, but in general, the biggest influx of coins is from your quests, and the developers are saying, play at your own pace, and we're going to reward you for that. We're not going to punish you for not making this your full-time job. And that's awesome. Super glad to hear that. The next thing that I love about the quests is that they can be completed against the AI and in comics. And what that means is if you're a newer player and you're just building your collection, or you don't necessarily like the PvP aspects of the game, but you still want to build your collection for other things, or you prefer playing against AI, or you just want to grind out your quests and go do something else, whatever your reason is, giving players the option and the flexibility of where they complete their quests is just an awesome decision to put into your players' hands instead of trying to force it on them. So it's both new player friendly. If you're the type that really just wants to play the comics, you still get rewards from that, and maybe it tempts you to play PvP. If you have ladder anxiety, all of these things are alleviated by basically allowing you to complete your quests wherever and however you prefer to play, with the only caveat being you cannot complete them against friends, which I think is fair because, that can be exploited a bit. So I think that's perfectly reasonable of a limitation, especially when you're being so flexible otherwise. Kind of on that same topic of flexibility and friendliness of how quests can be completed, I really appreciate the way the developers designed the quests themselves. And by that I mean, if you play other games, the types of quests that you'd probably see in Dual Force would be like, play 50 Green Lanterns, or play 50 Arkham inmates, or, kill, X Justice League members, or play X Justice League members. And while those quests can be, cool and unique, they can be a bit of a pain for a couple of reasons. A, what if I don't want to play Green Lanterns? You're making me play them, and I feel like I'm missing out. And, I might not ever complete the quest if I don't specifically play the game in a way that I don't prefer. But also, what if I'm a newer player and I only have one Green Lantern, or I don't have any Green Lanterns? Now I feel like I can't complete the quest at all. So, what the developers did here was, the quests still have some requirements, but they are very general requirements that kind of go along with that mindset of just play the game and you'll get your rewards. So like instead of being play, 50 Green Lanterns. It might just be play 50 Silver Recruits. And at that point, you're free to play whatever deck you want. As long as it has some Silver Recruits in it, you're still going to make progress. Or play 50 actions. It doesn't have to be 50 of a specific type. Just go play your deck, and you'll get progress towards your quest. So I'm very happy just across the board with how quests were designed. The requirements for completing the quests seem pretty reasonable from the ones I've seen. The rewards are solid. If you complete all of your daily quests, you get 7,000 coins from the daily quests, plus an additional 4,000 from your weekly, giving you 11,000 coins total, which means each week, just for completing quests, you would get enough coins to purchase 5.5 packs, not counting your regular wins and comics and things like that. So 5.5 packs per week just for finishing quests. It's not, unreasonable to think if you play PvP to complete your quests that you will very likely get enough coins at a minimum to get a pack per day. And that's not counting daily login rewards or comics. So I think that is a very fair start to the economy, and definitely getting off on the right foot for kind of developing the rest of the economy as we go. I'm definitely interested to see how some of that will develop over time. The next thing I wanted to talk about is we got a bit of a developer update. I believe it was today, August 31st, but it might have been late last night, yesterday, I'm not sure. Basically just talking about how we're transitioning from the initial phase of open beta to what they are calling the early access phase of open beta. And the developers did a good job of laying out exactly what the milestones are or the checkpoints are during this early access phase and what we can expect moving forward, and kind of in order as well. So basically, if you go on dualforce.com or dcdualforce.com, in the news section, you'll see the development status update. And the first thing they called out was the first step of this early access phase was releasing daily and weekly quests. So as soon as that patch released yesterday, we have entered into that phase more or less. And that phase is the first of many of them getting to what they call feature complete. If you're not from a software background, feature complete really just means you have a list of features A through Z. Once you complete A through Z, you are considered feature complete. It's the minimum features that you need to complete to say your game is kind of quote-unquote ready. And then there's not to say you won't ever add additional features, but those are kind of your add-on features over time. So the first thing that we received was daily and weekly quests. Up next, and now I don't know if that is a matter of a week or two or multiple weeks, but next in the pecking order is ranked ladder and updated daily login rewards, including the start of our subscription service. So if all of that comes in one patch, or a back-to-back patch, that is already a huge amount of things being added to the game, because ranked ladder, I believe, has some rewards associated with it, and just ranked ladder in general is something necessary for the game to continue growing and give competitive players kind of their outlet to focus their skills, so I'm excited to see that coming. But on top of that, daily login rewards and the subscription coming on top of it is huge. And the reason why those two are separated is the subscription gives you an additional track of rewards, whereas the daily login rewards are available to all players. I don't know the general accumulation of what the differences between the two will look like. Obviously, you can assume that the subscription, the paid one, will give you more in general, but still, even if you are a free-to-play player, completely free-to-play, you will still get login rewards as a free-to-play player. Additionally, once those daily login rewards and subscription are releasing, the devs are saying that we will be expecting weekly comics and monthly mini-sets. The mini-sets will be included in the subscription fee, so if you purchase the monthly subscription, you will get the mini-sets, which means at a minimum, we're expecting 10-ish new cards per month, which is incredible. That's just a nice influx of cards to shake things up every month, keep things fresh and moving. And then on top of that, weekly comics, I think 2 of them or so will be free, and 2 of them will be for the subscription or something along those lines. That's just a lot of content that is kind of on the horizon. That means, not only will you have ranked ladder and, the ranked rewards, and you'll have your daily login rewards both as a free-to-play and bonus daily login rewards as a subscriber, but then on top of that, every week you're getting a new comic, and every month you're getting 10 or so new cards to play with, that is a lot of guaranteed content, not even touching, getting closer to general pack expansions or things like that we can probably expect, but we don't necessarily have a timeline on. And then that's the next phase. So that's the next milestone, is ranked ladder, daily login rewards, subscriptions, weekly comics, and monthly mini sets. If all of that comes together, holy crap, that will be incredible. I expect that it'll probably be, a couple patches apart. So we'll probably get like ranked ladder one patch, maybe daily login and the subscription next patch, and then starting the comics and mini sets from there on. But we'll see how that works out, how it shakes out over time. And then the next thing that we're getting after that is crafting. So crafting seems to be third on the pecking order, and that does make sense. It's definitely something that I know everybody wants to see a lot, and it's, a necessary feature, but I would definitely rather the content start coming than crafting in general. But, development is a fluid process. Things could definitely change over time. Things may move up or down in priority, or unforeseen bugs or other hiccups could push things up or down and make things take a bit longer. And then after crafting, or alongside crafting around the same time frame, is when DC Dual Force will release on Steam and the Epic Game Store. Now, this is when I expect that they'll probably start ramping up their marketing efforts, because assuming everything goes smooth throughout the rest of the process, once you hit that early access release on Steam and the Epic Game Store, you're going to have crafting, you're going to have your mini sets, you're going to have your subscription, you're going to have your weekly comics, you're going to have your login rewards, you're going to have ladder. Is that it's the point where, you kind of have all of your core features, and you're going to start making the game increased visibility just naturally by being on Steam and the Epic Store. That is the point where I would assume that they're going to start ramping up those marketing efforts. You'll probably see some sponsored streams or things along those lines. You'll really start to see the team kind of pump that money into the marketing side of things. That's when I would expect that to start coming. That's a long-winded way of saying they've always been exciting. I've always been having a lot of fun with this game. But as we're kind of ramping up and this car is kind of starting to speed up on the highway, it's getting more and more exciting. Just knowing these features are coming and knowing what those features being delivered means for the game as a whole and our community as a whole is just a really, really exciting time, and I'm very excited for the future and looking forward to see what comes next on that front. Next up, I wanted to talk about, once yesterday's patch released, the natural thing that all the sleuths in our community do is dig through the client and see what they can find. And, there were some kind of more innocent things, like some card backs that are in the card back section, I believe, that are not released yet or haven't been sold yet, that we can look forward to coming soon. But there's also a good amount of cards, and some of those cards we've seen previously in the Blue Beetle comic, some of those cards we have not seen previously in the Blue Beetle comic, but those cards are in client. If you go in the game right now and you click on Show Unowned in the collection menu, you can see those cards in the game right now. And what that means is those cards are probably pretty close to saying, they're going to get delivered like this. If they're in the game, there's still room for the developers to bump a stat point up or down or something like that. But I think it's likely that they're probably going to get delivered something along these lines. And I think there is, 9 or 10 new cards in the client right now. And I would encourage you to open up the game client if you're listening, at home, and you can open up the game client. Otherwise, I'm going to describe what these cards are. We'll give some thoughts about it. I wanted to just go over this list of cards and talk about what we can look forward to. So the first card I want to talk about is Booster Gold. No, not that one. We have another Booster Gold with a new art. Still in energy, but this one is a gold 5/5. So 5 attack, 5 defense. And the ability states, the first time you play a gold each turn, generate a gold resource. So that means, technically, you could play 3 cards per turn, 2 of them being golds if Booster Gold is on the board. So now there's a couple things to think about with this card. The first one being, wow, that seems very, very strong. And you're correct, it is very, very strong. However, there's a catch here, and the catch is that the card needs to stick on the board. I believe right now there is a potential bug in the game where if you play Cyborg the Recruit, he activates himself by being played. If that bug is still in the game when Booster Gold released, then he's going to be crazy because he's essentially a free gold that will generate a gold. And that makes you get immediate value out of him. If that is not a bug, or if that is a bug and it gets fixed or whatever, this becomes a bit more situational because you need to make him survive for a turn. So if you're Zatanna, you can use that spell to give him hidden or something along those lines. I still think this is going to be a solid to strong card, especially for things like Blood Beetle or other cards we'll talk about that care about playing golds. So I still think Booster Gold will be a solid card. I just don't think he's going to be incredibly cracked because getting him to survive on the gold turns isn't a guarantee. 5 health is a decent amount, but you got to figure as you're hitting your gold turns, unless you're way ahead, your opponent's going to have leader abilities they can use, plus whatever they have left on the board can probably chip away at Booster Gold. But I still think that this is going to be a fairly strong card and may also help people build into making their decks a bit heavier. Right now, I think in general, you'll see decks run anywhere from like 4 to 7 or 8 gold cards. You may see that number bump up a tiny bit just because of the existence of Booster Gold and some of these other cards that are going to be in the Blue Beetle mini set. And speaking of gold cards or caring about gold cards, the next one we'll talk about is one that we saw in the comics, Brenda Del Vecchio. She is in Tactics. She is a bronze 1/1, and her text reads, draw all gold cards that are in the top 5 cards of your deck. So that'll draw your Booster Gold. It'll actually draw the next card. We'll talk about Paco, which is one we saw. It's just a good card. Drawing all of the golds in the top 5 cards means, like we've talked about previously, you're filtering out golds from being your top deck, which means your top 5 cards now are more likely to be playable in the early game, which is something you definitely want to do to smooth out your curve. Right now, one of the worst things that can happen to you in the game is, let's say your starting hand is like bronze, silver, 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 and then you top deck gold, gold, gold. Even if you only have 5 golds in your deck, sometimes it's going to happen. Top decking gold, gold, gold can kind of just mean you lose the game sometimes, whereas now Brenda's going to say, draw those 3 golds, and now when your actual draws start, let's make sure we're getting something that's a little bit more realistic to play. I think Brenda is going to be an incredible card for bronze, not just in the early game. I think she scales into the late game as well, because typically in the late game, if you draw a bronze, if you top deck a bronze, it's horrible. But if it's a bronze that can filter out and take your gold cards, meaning now you have a guaranteed powerful play, that is a very, very good card to have in your deck. I think Brenda's going to see a ton of play. Maybe not the top amount of play from this Blue Beetle set, but I think she might actually be in the top 3-ish cards of this set, which as a bronze is pretty impressive. Next up, we've got Paco Testa. We saw Paco previously. He is a tactics card. He is a bronze, 3/3 in stats, and his ability reads, this counts as a gold wherever he is, which not only means that Brenda will draw him, it means that you have a bronze card that can activate your gold synergy. That also means that if you play Paco with Booster Gold on the board, you'll now have 2 gold resources instead of 1 gold and a silver. So Paco can activate that. He can activate Blue Beetle. He can activate Jamie Reyes. He can activate Blood Beetle. Paco is just kind of like a driver for this entire mini set of cards. I think if you're playing, honestly, even like 1 or 2 of these cards, I think Paco is an auto-include, and he may even wind up being close to an auto-include if you're running like 1 of these cards, because a 3/3 bronze is like decent, and then the potential gold synergy on top of it is just kind of really, really good. Speaking of gold synergy, we're going to have Blue Beetle, which we've seen previously as well. He is a Tactics Silver 6/4 Hunter. After you play a gold card, charge both of your leaders. So now that means Booster Gold can charge your leaders, and then from there you can play additional gold cards after in the next turn. Paco is a bronze that can charge both of your leaders. Just honestly, even if on turn 3 you play Blue Beetle and Paco. And that is all the value you get out of Blue Beetle. A 6/4 Hunter, already pretty decent for a silver. And then just playing Paco and charging both of your leaders, a 6/4 Hunter that says charge both your leaders, is a god tier card. I think Blue Beetle is going to be so much played. Like, see so much play. And it's giving... I like that a lot of these cards are in Tactics, because it's giving Tactics an identity that isn't just play your gadgets. You know, that's cool for Batman in general, but I don't think that's super exciting as an identity for the faction. So I like that these Blue Beetle cards are giving a new identity to parts of Tactics. And now we have another Tactics card. This is the final Tactics card we're going to talk about. Jamie Reyes, same thing we saw from the comics. He is a silver 2/2, and after you play a gold card, transform into the Blue Beetle. And the Blue Beetle is a 7/7 with Evade and Hunter. So, both Blue Beetle, the regular card, the 6/4 Hunter, and Blue Beetle, the 7/7 Evade Hunter, both of those are incredible. And Paco being able to activate either one on turn 3 is nuts. If you transform Jamie on turn 3 and you have a 7/7 Evade Hunter on the board, the advantage you get from that is just astounding. I don't know how else to put it. That is such a ridiculously strong card to have early in the game, and it's going to be a really cool card. Obviously, if you can't immediately transform Jamie on the turn you play him, he is very weak. A 2/2 silver is very, very weak. But I also don't think this is the kind of card that you ever play without a gold to back him up. So if you don't have Paco, or you don't have a way to give him hidden, or you don't have, you know, a gold to play immediately on turn 5, I just don't think you let Jamie hit the board. But other than that, this is an incredibly strong card. And again, if you're running Blue Beetle, you're probably running Paco, which means why not run Jamie? Like, these cards just make sense to have together as a package, and then Brenda can make sure you draw your Paco. I think this is going to be a very strong package of cards. Next up, we've got Carapax, who is an Anarchy card. Nice to see Anarchy getting some late game cards, because this guy is a gold. His stat line is a 6/3, which seems weak for a gold, and you're correct. However, his ability reads, cannot protect, which means if he is sitting in front of your leader, you can attack right by him as if he had hidden or he was exhausted. Or if he's in the back row between your leaders, you can attack right past, or if he's in front of the back row, he cannot block a recruit behind him. So he cannot protect, but he also is invincible, which means he does not take combat damage. Now, there's something I need to see with the way this card currently works, is recently they changed the Flash recruit, who is invincible on your turn, where if you use Lex's leader ability on him, it will sacrifice the Flash, and it will KO him despite him being invincible. So now if KO goes through invincible, then things like Omega Beam or things like that can deal with Carapax. If it cannot go through invincible, and that's just an edge case for Lex, Carapax gets a lot stronger. That's not to say he can't be answered. You can use Straight Jacket on him, and now he's just a 0/3 that's on the board, and you can't really do much about him. You can use Mark of Cain to make him a 3/0. If we ever get silence effects, he can be removed with silence effects. I think this card has some play potential. I think it's going to be a really good arena card as well. But I think the main thing you're going to see from this card is, does Anarchy ever want to play gold cards? Right now, Anarchy has a lot of aggression associated with it, and it's not really playing a lot of late game cards. Is Carapax enough to make you want to run late game in Anarchy? I think maybe enough to make you experiment. I don't know if it's enough for a deck to stick necessarily. I definitely have some doubts when it comes to Carapax, but I think he's an interesting card that somebody will probably find a way to make work. Next up, we've got a couple Tyranny cards. The first one being Infiltrator Scarab. I think we've seen this one in the comic as well. It is a Tyranny, 1/1 hidden. It is a silver card. And this stat, or the ability reads, after this attacks a leader, summon the Reach in all empty spaces and sacrifice this. And the Reach are bronze 3/3s. So there's a couple things that are cool about this. One, it's a hidden card, so it's not as easy for your opponent to remove. But with the additional drawback of it needs to strike a leader, so you need to be able to open up a window for this card to attack. However, if it does attack, you get the benefit of this guy removes himself and you get 3/3s in all of your empty spots. And the reason why I like that is that gives Tyranny another one of these kind of swarm the board token cards, which I think is a archetype that doesn't really exist in the game right now. It only has right now Bursting Boom Tubes and Gotham Riots in terms of tokeny type cards. And I think introducing Infiltrator Scarab gives you that one additional tool to where maybe you can try and make that a deck. I still think you're probably like a tool or two off, but I think you're getting close, and that's all I can ask for. And it's an interesting / fun card. If you can pull it off, let's say you play this guy on turn 3, on turn 4 you can swing. That's, up to 4 3/3s on turn 4. It's not the strongest thing in the world, but also there's times where filling the board and doing other things with your resources is pretty valuable. Ultimately, I think this is going to be a very situational to maybe underwhelming card, but I also think that this card has some of the most potential, being like a lot of the cards that we've talked about, mainly like those tactics beetle cards. They're good, you can see they're good, they're going to see play, like they don't need to grow into their strength, is what I'm saying. They're already good, they don't need to develop. Infiltrator Scarab has the most room to grow from underwhelming to being potentially pretty good in the right deck over time. Next up, we've got Black Beetle. This is a Tyranny card as well. It is a gold card, and its stats are 5/5, with the ability Parting Shot. Put this in the top 5 cards of your deck. It becomes free, gains +5/+5, and loses this ability. So initially, he's a gold 5/5, which is pretty slow, pretty weak for no additional ability. It's basically Brainiac with no ability, so that's kind of iffy. However, once you trigger him, becoming a free 10/10 is very, very good. And you can draw him guaranteed with like a Mr. Terrific, or you can try and thin him out. There's just a lot of things you can do. However, it's just a matter of, on your gold turn, spending your gold on a 5/5 that does nothing immediately is very expensive. So you have to be the kind of deck that can afford that kind of tempo loss in the late game. And then the question becomes, if you can afford that kind of massive tempo loss, did you already win the game anyway, since you were already that far ahead where you can afford that? But I still think that there'll be some times where this card can shine. It's going to probably be specific scenarios, specific game states. So I don't think this card is going to be universally good, but I definitely think that there's going to be some times where this card is going to be pretty strong. Just is it strong often enough to warrant a slot in your deck? That I don't know. Maybe if you do it with like booster gold, where you can still play an additional gold card, and then again, like you're probably still so far ahead. I don't know. It's the kind of card where I think you need to test it out. I don't think this is a guaranteed like sees play in your deck, but I think it is interesting enough that it's worth the experimentation. And finally, we have one more card, and this might be one of the craziest cards, if not the craziest card in the set, and that is La Dama. She is a Tyranny card. She is gold. Her stats are 7/3, and her ability reads, deploy. If you've played at least 2 other gold cards this game, KO all enemy recruits. So it's a one-sided massacre with really the only downside being that you've had to have played 2 other gold cards. Now, there is the argument of, have you played 2 other gold cards, and like, is there enough stuff on the board where La Dama is going to be good? I still think she's always going to be good because she doesn't affect your board. But also, there's things like if you play a Tyranny Tactics deck, you could have played 2 Pacos before this and activate her on turn 5, which is incredible. Honestly, I really think if you're any kind of control deck, La Dama is going to be a staple. I think she's going to be a guaranteed inclusion in basically all Tyranny control decks for a long time. Now, obviously you need to make sure you can activate her, so you need to have enough other draw to make sure you're playing your gold cards. So she's not going to be like always win the game on turn 5. I don't think she's as oppressive as some people may think she's going to be. But in terms of if I'm surviving or I'm in a control mirror, being able to play a 7-3 that kills all my opponent's recruits is killer in a control mirror, and can be even really good if you've survived into the late game, not counting like the possible Paco synergies as well on top of that. I think Ladama is going to be very, very strong. I think if I had to give you my knee-jerk reaction top 3 cards from the set, in no particular order, I think it would probably be Ladama, potentially Blue Beetle and Brenda. The Blue Beetle 6/4 card, not the Jamie card, although Jamie has potential to be nutty, and Paco is kind of like the engine that makes all those cards run, so he gets honorable mention. But just like in a vacuum, individual cards, I think Ladama, Blue Beetle, and Brenda are probably my top 3 from the set. If you have a top 3, let me know either in the YouTube comment section or on Twitter or Discord. Let me know what you guys think are the top 3 cards from the cards that we just covered. So, the final thing I wanted to leave you guys with before we wrap up shop today is my plan is for the next episode to have our first guest. I'm going to try and coordinate schedules with Obijan over the next couple days. We have a holiday weekend coming up, so hopefully both he and I can coordinate over the next handful of days and try and get that scheduled. Definitely excited to have the first guest on the podcast, as well as excited to schedule some future guests as we move forward. If you have any other guests that you'd like to see included on the podcast, reach out to me or have them reach out to me, and we'll get people scheduled. Definitely very excited to have guests on the podcast moving forward. I can't guarantee we'll have a guest every single week. Sometimes, schedules might not line up, or I just might not have anyone in the hopper. But I want to have as many guests as possible. I want to give back to this community as much as I can. Even if my audience is small, I want to make sure that I use whatever platform I have to give back to this community. Whether it's content creators, just people who are active in the community, developers, I want everyone to be featured with whatever platform I have. And with that, I do want to thank you all very much for listening every week, for the support on the content and the support on my channel. I appreciate you guys so much. And thank you guys all for hanging out today and listening to episode 5 of the Cape and Cowl podcast. If you have any questions you'd like to enter for a Q&A segment of episode 6, either leave them in the YouTube comment section, send them in to my email, or however you'd like to get in contact with me. Other than that, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.